If you've watched my previous videos, you'll know I'm creating Helm for the tabletop. And this video in particular will concentrate on how to create a wargaming tile using MDF sheets and insulation foam. So no messing about, I'm going to get straight into it. I cut the MDF board that I've shown previously by splitting it into 3 pieces, which works out to be approximately 606 by 606. It doesn't have to be exact, you just kind of want to use the width of the board and cut it into 3. That's how I did it anyway. But of course you can cut it to any size you want. If you're watching this and you think my technique is awful, that's because it is. I've not really cut wood before. This was my second attempt at doing it as well. I didn't have a proper jigsaw or anything previously, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I still managed to do it. So if I can do it, I'm sure you can too. And I managed to cut 3 equal-ish boards. And the next step is you want to cut out some foam that's around about the same size as these. So I got a massive board of insulation foam. The boards are absolutely huge, and I cut off a square the same size as the MDF I've just shown. I'm using a knife here to kind of peel away the silver on each side of the foam. I'm not exactly amazing at this, but I'm showing you this because I'm a beginner attempting this, and if I can do it, it means you can do it too. I've seen this done much more efficiently, but it still works, and the end result is still going to be the same. And if you're wondering, to cut out the square itself, it's very easy. I just use a snap blade. And then all you simply do is cover the foam in PVA and glue it on. And you can use this for any wargaming tile you want. You can texture it with a simple ball of foil, for example. You can just dab it or kind of roll it on, and you can use this for any wargaming tile. I myself have already created one before I did this for Warhammer 40k, kind of like a rocky grey kind of terrain. All you need to do is leave it to rest overnight, then design it to be the way that you want it to be. So this was the first one that I ever made. And remembering that's my very first attempt. So if you give this a go, you can just get better and better at it and just create more interesting things. So going back to the Helm's Deep wall tile specifically, I wanted to create a river tile with a river running through the game board, and I wanted it to go through the culvert on the Helm's Deeping wall that I created. So first of all, I kind of sketched out how I wanted to look on the foam, and then again I went back to my trusty snap blade, and I was a bit surprised at just how easy this was. I was quite worried, but honestly, cutting out the foam with the snap blade, I'm no expert, but I managed to do it. I just didn't go too deep. I just went as deep as I wanted it to. Another thing I did, you might notice, is I never actually stuck the foam to the MDF board first, just in case I completely messed this up, so I wouldn't be wasting the foam and the board. But honestly, I got it right first time. It wasn't too bad at all. And once I was happy with the look, I literally got a piece of sandpaper, as you can see, and I just smoothed it down a bit so it wasn't too bumpy. But a few bumps make it look more realistic, so I didn't want to completely smooth it out, which is why I feel the snap blade and the sanding paper combo works pretty well for what I'm trying to do. And then, just like I demonstrated before, I'm just going to glue the foam onto the board and leave some weights on it overnight so that it sticks and settles in place nicely. When I did wake up the following morning, it was a bit sunburned in the middle, but that was fine because I'm going to paint it anyway. And to seal the foam, I'm just simply using half acrylic black paint, half PVA glue, and a splash of water, and I just put that all over. So all on the top, all on the river, all on the ground, all on the sides, just everywhere, just to give it a good seal. The other reason you want to do it all over the board is if you leave some unsealed, it's more prone to warping. You don't kind of want a bent board. The coverage doesn't have to be completely perfect, but in the end you'll end up with something that looks a bit like this, looking nice. Yeah. Anyway, next thing I wanted to do was to kind of make it look more muddy rather than just black. The black's going to give the shade, but the most important thing is to have a brown muddy kind of field. So I used a burnt umber brown. I will include the links in my description so you can see exactly what paints I used. But yeah, I burnt umber brown all over for that first dark coat, and I did that all over, including in the river tile. But I did go back over this with a black in the centre of the river tile because I wanted to keep that kind of like dark shadow at the bottom of the river. I then moved on to a different shade of brown, which was the burnt sienna. I used this one a bit more sparingly, but again all over, this time avoiding the actual river itself. It's just for the ground. You kind of want to make it look a bit more patchy so it looks a bit more realistic. You've already got your coat of the dark brown, so now you want to kind of add a bit of variation on the ground. And of course you don't need to use the exact same colours that I used if you wanted to recreate something like this. The main premise is to start off with a darker colour, black to begin with, and then if you're trying to go for a muddy look like me, just a darker brown leading into lighter browns. And to finish off with a very light ivory colour. I used this very sparingly. I was a little bit worried with this one because it is so bright. I didn't want it to clash too much. But I just kind of broke up the paint a bit, and you don't want those kind of streaky looks. And where I had it the lightest, thankfully, ended up being underneath the wall anyway. So the areas I was concerned about were naturally covered. And to be honest, when it dries, it never looks quite so bad anyway. And I also plan on covering these areas with some flocking. So some like grassy patches, so it's never too much of a concern. It's good to have that colour variation. And this is what it looked like when it dried, so it kind of achieved the effect I wanted of that kind of dried, earthy kind of look. Next, I wanted to add some depth to the river, so I started off just by painting a darker black within the actual river itself on the riverbed to create that kind of depth and shadow. And to create a bit more of a noticeable contrast, I brushed on a neutral grey on the kind of the walls of the riverbed, so you could really see that dark to light variation and that you'd expect when looking in the river. And then finally, to create that kind of mossy effect, I added a Sap Green paint just in certain spots. So it kind of looks like a bit of plant life has grown in the riverbed, because that's what you'd expect in real life. And I wanted to create a bit more of a realistic look. So this is the final look of the riverbed, and that was the main design for my tile for this Helm's deepening wall. Now, my future videos will feature how to do the resin pour and how to do some flocking. So if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. It massively helps me out. I do have massive plans for how I want this to look across multiple boards. Thank you!